So, in a bit of interesting news on Chris Brown, now on the channel not too long ago, we touched on a petition that was being, you know, uh, tossed around to get signed, which would prevent Chris Brown from performing in South Africa due to his past history with domestic violence situations. There were some who felt as though he should not be allowed to perform in South Africa due to some of these previous incidents. And it didn't go clearly, it didn't happen because Chris Brown inevitably did perform in South Africa. And not only did he perform, but it was a massive success. And so, some are finding it interesting that despite his past controversies and despite the best efforts of a particular organization, and I'm going to look up the name of the organization that was trying to petition him because we did bring that up on the channel. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But despite that organization's best effort and despite outcries from certain people, Chris Brown in South Africa, it went through and it drew a crowd of over 90,000 people. So this says Chris Brown goes viral with historic South Africa concert, drawing over 90K in attendance. In Johannesburg, South Africa, Chris Brown described his concert at FNB Stadium as the moment he has been waiting his whole life for. After being met with a viral petition following the announcement of the concert months ago, Brown hosted a historic evening on December 14th with over 90,000 in attendance. Footage from the concert circulated on social media, resulting in the artist trending. One of the biggest highlights of the evening was Brown soaring across the stadium. In October, the petition to block Brown from performing in South Africa based on previous assault convictions, spearheaded by the women's advocacy group Women for Change. So there you go. That's the organization, Women for Change. Went viral with nearly 40,000 signatures. The singer responded to the petition, commenting, "Can't wait to come," in the comment section. On Saturday, before performing Forever, Brown took a moment to address the audience for their attendance. He said, "This is a moment I've waited for my entire life."
All right, so there's
So
Breezy
here
doing his thing.
The article goes on to say the South Africa concert proved he is still beloved by the culture after his past shortcomings. His fans stood by him, packing the stadium for a night that showcased his evolution as a performer and his deep connection to his audience. He performed classics such as Yo and Run It alongside the latest Residual, Sensational, and Angel Numbers 10 Toes. Fans praised the planning with controlled traffic flow and helpful staff guiding attendees safely out of the stadium. Afterward, Brown took to Instagram to thank South Africa for its overwhelming support. He wrote, "South Africa, I love you. See you tomorrow. First show was history, so let's make it again." As fans eagerly anticipate the second night of his tour, it's clear that Chris Brown has etched his name into South Africa's live music history, delivering an extraordinary performance that will be remembered for years to come. So, what do you make of the fact that despite this petition and despite his his history, he sold this thing out in South Africa? 90,000 people showed up. And it looks like there is just as much, if not more, anticipation for the second performance.
I think that it just shows that how how people care about stuff like that. I'm pretty sure those people that were in attendance that don't per se condone domestic violence, but at the same time, they don't care enough to not go see him, enough to not listen to his music if they're fans. They're forgiving for somebody that they love, and they're willing to just, turn the other cheek and, witness somebody that's never really in their country. So, I just think that, DV is real. It's serious. It's not a joking matter. It is something to be, it's definitely something to be frowned upon. But, at the same time, this happened a while ago. Now I don't know if he's had any more recent events where he's around here you know, beating up women. Okay. But if this is stemming from the Rihanna situation, you know, the guy is trying to move on and get his life going. And I think other people have moved on from that. And so if the guy wants to put on a show and a festival, you know, let the guy do his thing and, you know, make his money and move on. Because I'm telling you right now, out of those 90,000 that are in attendance, you know, that made some people's lives. I mean, they're going to talk about that forever. Now, whether or not it's something that people say, well, you shouldn't care, you know, if the Chris Brown concert was the best thing that ever happened to you, then blah 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 blah. And it's like, hey man, you teach their own, man. Who are you to say that to somebody? So all in all, you know, it's rough stuff, man, because those ladies that were standing up against, you know, what he did, you know, they have a legitimate gripe, you know, in their own worlds. I'm pretty sure they're very close to domestic violence themselves somehow, some way, whether they were either victims of it, knew somebody that was a victim of it, or what have you. You know, they want those people to pay and pay forever. So, you know, I get their side of the fence too, but overall, you know, I'm somewhere in the middle with it, in the sense that, hey man, pay your debt to society, however that comes. You know, learn your lesson from it. Don't go around keep doing it. Uh, and if you learned your lesson, you paid your debt, and you're moving on, then move on. There's bigger fish to fry, and there's active domestic violence people to be attacking at that moment. But at least that's what I think, man. And yeah, you know, for the people that were in attendance and had a great time, I hope you enjoyed yourselves, man, because you know, it's not often that somebody that is a United States celebrity goes to South Africa like that, on the level of a Chris Brown, to go down there and perform. So he made a lot of people's days and lives. So I hope those people enjoy it. But what are you, yeah, honestly, man. But what are your thoughts, man, on Chris Brown? You know, despite all the backlash and all of that stuff going on about him approaching South Africa, actually goes down there, performs, and actually makes some history. What are your thoughts, man?
My thoughts are, this is the nature of people. Like, I'm with you, man. I'm somewhere in the middle. I remember the last time we talked about this, I said that on the one hand, I have a serious problem with this current penalization methodology that we've adopted for transgressions, in which the transgression must equate to like permanent suffering. So we just want people who have been accused of things to suffer into perpetuity and have the ability to earn a livelihood permanently forfeited, even if they have paid their debt to society. I'm not a fan of that. Like, you know, if you've done something and it's bad and it's negative or whatever, and you suffer the consequences, you pay your debt to society, you know, you undergo your contrition and your therapy and your counseling and all of this other goofy stuff that they make people do, and you come out on the other end and you appear to be rehabilitated. There have been no incidents since that point moving forward. I've never been the biggest fan of you shouldn't be allowed to do this ever again kind of thing. I've never been the biggest fan of that. That to me has to be reserved for the most heinous of crimes and acts and actions, not something where the, you know, and this is just my opinion, but not a situation where the individuals live to tell another day and the person paid his debt to society, in this case, Chris Brown. And even though there were people who suffered in any particular situation, they seem to be doing fine on the back end. They moved on and proceeded to have productive, fruitful lives. Why? What is it cathartically that makes you feel as though it's just for this person to suffer into perpetuity? So I've never agreed with that. But on the other end, I also said, I believe in principle and I believe in people standing on a principle. As a principled human myself, I don't blame anybody who believes in a particular set of principles, morals, ethics, and codes and stands on those within reason, not extremist principles and codes, but reasonable principles and codes, even if it's something that I don't agree with. It can be something that I disagree with, but I respect people who stand on that and they're consistent and they say, hey, I don't care who it is or what it is. I believe in this thing. And so, hey, this is a no fly zone as a result of that. I also respect that as well because I think that a world devoid of principle is a worse world. And I think what makes the world a better place is when you have more people than not who believe in and live by principles. So I'm kind of torn between a rock and a hard place. I don't want him to suffer into perpetuity, but I also admire the fact that there were certain people who principally believe in this thing so much that they wanted to petition for him to not be able to perform. At the end of the day, however, the people spoke, and that movement wasn't enough to prohibit him from being able to perform. And at that point, you just got to let that go, and it is what it is. I don't feel any type of way about the fact that he sold it out and that there were 90,000 people in attendance, because at the end of the day, unless a person, and this is human nature, whether we like it or not, unless a person is personally affected by something, the sentiment can be there and we can all galvanize around one another and show sympathy and have support and empathy for the next person who's dealing with something. But unless you're personally experienced it, people are going to just move on. And, you know, there may have been some people in that audience who didn't have a personal connection to whatever his past transgressions may have been, but I'm gather that the vast majority of those people don't. Therefore, they lived their lives free of that internal turmoil and they moved on, looking forward to seeing him perform in person because they're fans of his work. And to anybody who isn't happy with that, sorry, but you just got to eat that. That's kind of the way life works. That's the way it is. So I'm not mad about it. Like I said, for me, it was a win-win either way. Either he wasn't going to be allowed due to public pressure because people are standing on business, or he was going to be allowed because he paid his penance and he should therefore be allowed to move on with his life and continue to earn his livelihood. I don't believe people should have to suffer into perpetuity. For what? Like, is his suffering going to put more money in your pocket? No, it's not. Is his suffering going to end all of the, is his suffering into perpetuity going to end future incidents from happening? No, it's not. So, what personally do you stand to gain from his perpetual suffering, other than your own gluttonous appetite for his suffering being satisfied? So, from that standpoint, I don't feel any type of way about the fact that it was a success. And I'm no Chris Brown fan, but this is just the way this stuff works, man. So that's how I see it. I admire people who stand on codes and ethics and morals and principles, but I also don't like the fact that we have seemingly adopted this idea that a person should have to suffer permanently for transgressions unless we can all agree that the line was truly crossed and it was truly something heinous to which there is no coming back from. And for certain people, this is that, but I do think for most people, it's not. And life is not black and white. It's gray, it's nuance. And so it is what it is. People are just going to have to eat that.
Yeah, man. And, but, when you're dealing with victims, man, because I would argue that, a lot of those women that were, especially the louder ones that were signing the petition and, going out and trying to galvanize people, were most likely victims of some type of violence themselves. And they see all people who committed acts of violence as the same type of archetype of person. And so when you say, why should they suffer forever type of thing, from some of these victims, they feel like they should because they live with the trauma every day. So that person that went around and did it in their eyes should also be paying all the time. And so I think that that's why, you'll get these people that are trying to be beacons of whatever to try to balance things out. Be from a world full of people who do commit acts of violence of any type and continue to live their lives like nothing else happened while their victims are in shambles somewhere. So I understand that point. But at the same time, like you said, and like I said earlier, some people learn from their mistakes, man. And you still got to go out there and make things happen for your life and do stuff. So it's a fine line, bro. It's a fine line, but like I also said, there was probably victims of domestic violence themselves that went to the damn concert that are Chris Brown fans, and it's not on some weird Stockholm stuff. They just separate it. And they say, hey, that person that abused me was that person that abused me, but this is Chris Brown. And so they can separate it. But others, I think they put them all in the same boat as all of you guys are offenders and all of y'all have to pay. So who is this guy? What's his story? What did he do? Okay, yeah, he has to pay. Because that person is somehow, some way, the person that victimized them. So, when you're dealing with these situations, you'll get that. And I think that there is a minority of people that feel that way, which is what those people in that group were. And there's a majority of people that either weren't involved in that, can compartmentalize that, or maybe even Stockholm into it. But it's just a larger majority on the other side that said we want Chris Brown. So, yeah, man, I hear your point with people, having something to fight for and standing on business and stuff. Hey, man, those ladies fought, I'm sure, up until the bitter end for them. But, hey, man, like I said, just keep that energy for everybody. I think I said that on the first one, where it's like, hey, well, don't just isolate this for Chris Brown, okay? Hold your local, state, and whoever person accountable too. All right, because I'm pretty sure whatever they have down there, parliament or whatever type of governmental system that they have down there, I'm pretty sure there's some people that there was offensive and have their own thing going on as well. It may not have been domestic violence, it may not have been X, Y, or Z, but it was definitely probably something that they would frown upon. And so whether it's a celebrity down there or what have you, hold everybody accountable with that same vigor. All right. But I think that this was something that Chris Brown was a lightning rod and is a lightning rod for all domestic violence situations. And he just walks around as he's going to walk around with that label forever that he did that to Rihanna. And so if somebody didn't feel no type of way, they let the last 5 people walk right on by. But then here comes Chris Brown. Hey, I know what you did to Rihanna. It's like, all right, what about those 5 other people ahead of me who've done worse than Chris Brown? Well, yeah, but it's you. So hey, so for those ladies out there, you know what I'm saying, keep that same energy, I would say. But all in all, man, again, I still think that there's something to going to an event that you wanted to really go to, see the person that you really wanted to see, be amongst the people that are also fans or whatever of that, and having a good old time. And I think there's a lot of people that did that. So that's why I said in my opening statement, man, that, hey, man, rock on for those people that enjoyed and came to see what they wanted to see. And for those ladies that were fighting to the bitter end, you didn't take a loss here. There was a lot of people that heard y'all's voices, and there's women that feel just like y'all. And I'm sure that y'all voice will get stronger if y'all keep on keeping the same energy.
Yeah, I hear that. I think the reason why the same energy appears to not be kept is because to whom much is given, much is like required type of situation. Mm-hmm. So I think if your neighbor is an abuser of some sort and he works at Home Depot full time, there's not much to be taken away from him to equate to the penalty. Therefore, the same energy isn't given. Whereas
Home Depot.
Right. Whereas Chris Brown is a millionaire superstar rock star musician. He's earned so much, he has so much, therefore the price that he needs to pay needs to be greater than everyone else. And part of that greater price to be paid is paying more attention to and heightening the spotlight on people like him, as opposed to others who are more low key or private, not nearly as famous or not nearly as successful as him. And I agree with you. I think it needs to be the same across the board. I think, to use my example, I think if the guy at Home Depot, like if we really want to do this, if it's discovered that the guy at Home Depot did something like this, Home Depot needs to fire that guy, and there needs to be some sort of public shaming of that guy as a result. Just like everybody would like, well, not everybody, just like many people who feel the same way that this Women for Change organization feels about Chris Brown would like to see him permanently publicly shamed and fired from every opportunity for the rest of his life. So I do think across the board, the same energy does need to be kept, but I understand why it's not. It's because those who have more, those who retain more, are perceived to be responsible for paying the greatest price. Therefore, therefore, the most attention is paid to them, and that includes people in positions of power who aren't famous, who are more inconspicuous, elected officials, and everybody else who'll be out there doing shisty, corruptive things. The same energy needs to be accorded to them as well. So I hear you on that front, but at the end of the day, this is just the way this stuff works. I think most people, unless you are personally affected, always look at it and say, he paid his debt to society, he paid for what he did. Therefore, I'm going to compartmentalize this and I'm going to move on and continue to be a fan if they are a fan. That's kind of the way this stuff works. But I respect those who stood on business and who acted principally because they felt as though he didn't deserve that opportunity. I really do see both sides of it. I do. But at the end of the day, I personally am not comforted with the idea that an individual makes a mistake and then into perpetuity they must suffer, albeit everything you said making total sense, because I get it. Victims have to suffer for the rest of their lives. So why shouldn't he? I get it. But this is one of the ugly aspects of human existence, if you ask me. It's one of those things that is entirely inequitable. It isn't right. It doesn't make sense. It simply is. And I think, if you want to have your get back, if people really did care about it, just don't go. Don't buy the tickets. Don't support them. Just like if you really wanted the Washington football team to change the name, stop buying the season tickets and stop going to the games. You keep doing it and you keep buying the tickets, you keep supporting the program, which tells me you really don't care. People like to pay a lot of lip service to stuff when in actuality, they don't actually care about stuff. So I see both sides of it, and I don't blame either side for the way things panned out. But it is what it is, man. He'll be there for performance number 2, and it'll probably be just as, if not bigger.
Yeah, hey man, agree. And this is definitely not the same situation. But if R. Kelly had a concert next week, it's going to sell out, and there's going to be men and women in there, and everybody knows what's going on with that situation. So what I'm bringing that point up to say is that even if people know, they don't care, and they'll still go and show up. There's people still rocking out with an R. Kelly playlist. Hey, teach their own, man. I don't know what's going on. Because people say, hey, man, I can separate the art from the person, and all this other stuff. There's so many things that go on, man. So people are gonna have what they have, and they're gonna say what they're gonna say, and they're gonna do what they do, and support who they support. So even if there's people out there that are against what Chris Brown did, there's still going to be a large amount of people that's going to go show up and sell out. Not sell out, whatever, but sell out the event. And so that goes with any damn body. And like you say, hey man, list of heinous things. Hey man, there's people out here that do heinous stuff, and they still get support. So this is where we're at in the world, man. So, and that's why I was saying, for those ladies that had something to fight for and they were fighting for something and they feel as though it was righteous, Y'all's fight didn't go in vain. There's a lot of people that heard of y'all organization. There was women that's around that's in South Africa that heard of what y'all was doing and joined y'all. So it wasn't a futile effort. But of course, we're dealing with human nature, and people are going to support who they're going to support. And it is what it is. And I agree, man. Show number 2 is probably going to be even bigger. So, hey, man, yeah, everybody do their thing, man. Me personally, would I have went to a concert? I'm not a Chris Brown fan. So I would have, I guess I would have been a part of the protest by default. But if I had a free Chris Brown ticket, would I go? No, I don't. I'm not a Chris Brown fan.
This takes me back to, because really what we're talking about is a larger, and I'm going to use a word I've been using lately, but it's appropriate. It's a larger existential question.
No,
It takes me back. It takes me back to the conversation that we had about DEI and why it's fugazi. Because at the end of the day, you can't. The only way to truly address these that like DEI, for example, you want an organization to really embrace diversity. It has to care. And the people involved have to care. They can't be made to do something because you mandate it via a rule.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's always going to be hollow and shallow and not truly impactful.
Mm-hmm.
You can't legislate desire. You cannot make people care. Like, that's the thing about it. You can petition all of the signatures you want. At the end of the day, the people who don't feel that way about it the way you do, they can sympathize, but they don't care as much as you, and you can't change that. You can't legislate desire. You can't make, how do you make people care? That is an unanswerable question.
Mm-hmm.
It's an impossible riddle to solve. You can't make people, how do I make you care about something that I care about? I can't do that. We care about this and we don't care about that. So this is a larger plane of existence type dynamic that we got going on here. If the world at large felt as impassioned as the people who signed that petition felt, and the women who run that organization felt, he wouldn't have been performing there.
Agreed.
But the world don't operate on your time. It operates on its own time. And you can't make people care about this. Just like you can't make people care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can't make people care.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an unsolvable riddle. And I get how frustrating and painstaking stuff like this can be for those to whom it cares, for those who care about this stuff. I get it. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. Some solace that can be taken from this is it didn't go in vain. People heard it. It made some sort of a ripple effect. And we'll just see in the future if the next person who tries to perform gets met with even more resistance than Chris Brown did. You just never know. So you just have to wait and see what happens in the future. But you'll never be able to make people care. It's just not possible.
Agreed.
Shouts out to Women for Change, man. And, I'm going to say it. Shouts out to Chris Brown.
Bro, you're canceled, dude.
that what I just said, it means that I support abuse. I know.
Yeah, bro. You just hit a K, bro. Now they're about to demonetize your ass.
Shouts out to everybody, man. It is what it is.
Terrible.